Hello student, myself Kuhu Sarkar. This is my third video. In this video, I'm going to give you deep explanation of each and every question of WB 2023. In my previous videos, I gave you the answer of each and every question and now I'm going to explain it deeply. So, our first question, which of the following text has the subtitle A Novel Without a Hero? Now, see the explanation. Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair is an English novel by William Makepeace Thackeray which follows the lives of Becky Sharp and Amelia Sidley amid their friends and families during and after the Napoleonic Wars. It was first published as a 19-volume monthly serial from 1847 to 1848, carrying the subtitle Pen and Pencil Sketches of English Society. It was first published as a single volume in 1848 with a subtitle A Novel Without a Hero. The book the book's title comes from John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, a dissenter allegory first published in 1678. So this point is also very important that the book's title comes from John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. Now let's see the other options. Invisible Man. Invisible Man is a science fiction novel by H. G. Wells, originally serials in Parsons Weekly in 1897. It was first published as a novel the same year. The Invisible Man to whom the title refers is Griffin, a scientist who has devoted himself to research into optics and who invents a way to change body's refractive index to that of air so that it neither absorbs nor reflects light. So here the story is all about invisibility. The protagonist's name is Griffin and he is a scientist and he researched that how a human being can invisible and therefore the story goes on. He carries out the procedure on himself and renders himself invisible but fails in his attempt to reverse it. A practitioner of random and irresponsible violence, Griffin has become an iconic character in horror fiction. So, Griffin has become an iconic character in horror fiction. Then, our next option is Herzog. So, Herzog is a 1964 novel by Saul Bellow, composed in a part of letters from the protagonist Moses E. Herzog. The novel follows 5 days in the life of Moses E. Herzog, who at the age of 47 is having a midlife crisis following his second divorce. He has two estranged children, one by each wife, and is in a relationship with a vibrant woman, Romana, but finds himself running away from commitment. So here we see that the protagonist Herzog is trying to running away from his commitment. Then our next option is Sophie's Choice. Sophie's Choice is a 1979 novel by American author William Styron. The author's last novel, it concerns the relationship among three people sharing a boarding house in Brooklyn. Stingo. Stingo is a young aspiring writer from the South, Jewish scientist Nathan Landau and his lover Sophie. So there are three characters. First is Stingo, who is the we can say protagonist or the writer of aspiring writer from South and Jewish scientist Nathan Landau and his lover Sophie, a Polish Catholic survivor of German Nazi concentration camp whom Stingo befriends. So here we see that the life story of Sophie's is depicted in this novel. Now our next question is question number second. The term new women was coined by, the answer is Sarah Grant. Now let's see about the origin of the term new women are disputed, but it appears to have entered the language in 1894 when it was used in a pair of articles written by novelist Sarah Grant from born Frances Elizabeth Berenden Clark and Oida, pseudonym of Maria Louise Rame in the North American Revue. So here we see that Sarah Grant was first coined the term new women. Sarah Grant was an English feminist writer active from 1873 to 1922. Her work revolved around the new woman ideal. She used her experience of suffocation in marriage and the joy of consequent liberation in her fictional depiction of pre suffrage women with few political rights and options. So here we see that Sarah Grant used her experience of suffocation in marriage and joy of consequent liberation in her fictional depiction. Trapped in a oppressive marriages, later works would have a more sympathetic stance to males such as Babs the Impossible, in which the single noble woman would feel resurgence in their worth encouraged by the idealistic self-made man. So here we see that how she used the new women term in her works. Now let's see the next question. The next question is following the match. Now, as we see that, but do not let us quarrel anymore. It was written by Robert Browning. But do not let us quarrel anymore. No, my Lucretia, bear with me for once. Sit down, and all shall happen as you wish. So, this line is taken from Andrea del Sarto by Robert Browning. Then the next poem, it little profits that an ideal king by the still heart among these barren crags matched with an aged wife. I meet and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed, not no, not me. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rust unvarnished, not to shine in use. This line was written by Lord Tennyson in Ulysses. So the line is taken from Ulysses. Then the next poem, remember me when I am gone away, gone far away into the silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand. No, I half turn to go, yet turning stay. This poem was written by Christina Rossetti, and the name of the poem is The Remember. It is a sonnet, it is a beautiful sonnet, and it was written by Christina Rossetti. Then our next poem is Go, for they call you shepherd from the hill, go shepherd, and unto the wattle courts, no longer leave thy wistful flock unfed, nor let thy bowling. This is the poem name is The Scholar Gypsy by Matthew Arnold. So each and every poem is very much important. So you should read this poem. Now our next question, question number 4. Question number 4. Which of the following is not a work by John Ruskin? And we see that lives of the most excellent painters, sculptors, and architects is not the work by John Ruskin. Now see the other options. Question number 4. Modern Painters. Modern Painters was written by John Ruskin. Is a volume work by Victorian art critic John Ruskin. Began when he was 24 years old based on material collected in Switzerland in 1842. Ruskin argues that recent painters emerging from the tradition of the picturesque are superior in the art of landscape to the old masters. So, Ruskin argues that recent painters emerging from the tradition of the picturesque are superior in the art of landscape to the old master. Then, the next work is The Seven Lamps of Architecture. Is an extended essay first published in May 1849 and written by English art critic and theorist John Ruskin. The lamps of the title are Ruskin's principle of architecture, which he later enlarged upon in the three volumes. The Stone Angel, the Stone of Venice. To an extent, they codified some of the contemporary thinking behind the Gothic revival. So here, the seven lamps are like the lamps. The essay was published in book May 1849, is structured with 8 chapters and introduction and one chapter for each of the seven. Lamps which represent the demands the good architect must meet, expressed as direction in which association of ideas may take the observer. So here the seven lamps we can say. First is sacrifice. Dedication of man's craft to God as visible proofs of man's love and obedience. Then truth. Truth, handcrafted and honest display of materials and structure. Truth to materials and honest display of construction were bywords since the serious Gothic revival has distanced itself from whimsical Gothic of the 18th century. It had the often elaborated by Pugin and others. Power. Buildings should be thought of its term of their massing and reach towards the sublimity of nature by the action of human mind upon them and organization of physical effort in constructing buildings. Beauty, aspiration towards God expressed in ornamentation drawn from nature and his creation. Life. Building should be made by human hand so that the joy of masons and stone carvers is associated with the expressive freedom given them. Memory. Buildings should respect the culture from which they developed. Obedience. No originality for its own sake, but conforming to the finest among existing English value, in particular expressed through the English early decorated Gothic as safest choice of style. So therefore, now we see that he explained seven types of architect and he explains like this. Okay, and his next work, The Stone of Venice. It was also written by John Ruskin. The Stone of Venice is a three-volume treatise on Venetian art and architecture by English art historian John Ruskin, first published from 1851 to 1853. The Stone of Venice examines Venetian architecture in detail, describing, for example, over 80 churches. Ruskin discusses architecture of Venice, Byzantine, Gothic, and Renaissance period, and provides a general history of the city. So, in the Stone of Venice, he discussed architecture of Venice, Byzantine, Gothic, and Renaissance period, and provides a general history of the city. He provides general history of the city. Now the next work, which was not written by John Ruskin, and which was the answer, the lives of the most excellent painters, sculptors, and architects, often simply known as the lives, uh, is a series of artist biographies written by 16th century Italian painter and architect uh, Giorgio Vasari, which is considered perhaps the most famous and even today the most read work of the older literature of art. Some of the Italian Renaissance most influential writing on art. The first important book of art history. So the lives of the most excellent painters, sculptors, and architects was written by Giorgio Vasari. And now we see the our next question, which is question number 6. So what is there no the question number 5, sorry. Which of the statements are not true about Okonko in Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart? I don't take the explanation of for this question, because we have to read the novel or the plot summary in detail. So here we see that Okonko don't have four wives; he has three wives, and he is very much wealthy. So the option will be B and C. A is the right answer. Now next, let's see the question number 6. Visiting family is not uncommon is an example of litotes. So what is litotes? Now see, litotes is a figure of speech featuring a phrase that utilizes negative wording or terms to express a positive assertion or statement. So, what is litotes? Litotes is a figure of speech featuring a phrase that utilizes negative wording or terms to express a positive assertion. There are two or many other negative words and terms which express a positive assertion or statement. Literary is a common literary device most often used in speech, rhetoric, and non-fiction. So, rhetoric is a common literary device most often used in speech, rhetoric, and non-fiction. There are some examples of literary, like "My feelings are not unhurt," mean my feelings are uh, not unhurt. He is hardly unattractive, mean he is attractive. That lesson is not hard, mean lesson is easy. That lesson is easy. My car was not cheap, mean my car was not cheap, right? So this is literature. Now our next question, question number 7. Stanley Fish wrote the essay, "Is there a text in this class?" As a response to this, who wrote the essay, "Is there a fish in this text?" So now we see about the text and the theorist. Stanley Fish. Stanley Fish is one of America's most stimulating literary theorists. In this book, he undertakes a profound re-examination of some of criticism's most basic assumptions. He penetrates to the core of modern debate about interpretation, explores numerous misleading formulations, and offers a stunning proposal for a new way of thinking about way of we read. So we see that Stanley faces the work. Is there a text in this class criticize many of criticism and many of theorists like deconstruction and like Derrida's writing, that there is no author. So he criticized other critics and theorists, and he begins by examining the relation between a reader and a text, arguing against the formalist belief that the text alone is basic, knowable, neutral, and unchanging component of literary experience. But in arguing for the right of the reader to interpret and in effect create the literary work, he skillfully avoids the old traps of subjectivity. So what Stanley Fish did? Stanley Fish reject the idea of formalist belief. How he reject that? What he reject? Their idea that text alone is basic and knowable and neutral and unchanging component of literary experience, and he totally reject the subjectivity of text. So what he said? He said that to claim that each reader essentially participates in the making of a poem or novel is not, he shows an invitation to unchecked subjectivity. So he shows an invitation to unchecked subjectivity. He just totally reject the subjectivity to the endless proliferation of competing interpretations. For each reader approaches a literary work was not as an isolated individual but as part of community of readers. So he said that for each reader approaches a literary work not as an isolated individual. So it's not an approaches or explanation for any isolated individual, but is a part of a community of readers. Indeed, he writes, it is the interpretive communities rather than either the text or reader that produce meaning. So he said that it is not only the reader, it is not only an individual or a reader, or not a text which interprets the meaning is interpreted by the interpretive communities, mean our communities where we live, our communities and our social structure give the interpretation of a text. So it's not only for the one single being or one single reader, it's a interpretive of communities. And now Robert Scholes, he what he did, he criticized Stanley Fish writing. Is there a text in this class? And in the writing, Stanley Fish begins with a conversation of a student and a professor, where he begins with that, is there a text in this class, where the student asks this question and the professor answered yes, that there is a anthology. He just answered like this. And to criticize it, Robert Scores also begins with this same conversation, but in a ironic way or a satirized way. So he named the work, Is There a Fish in This Text? Let us begin with two fish stories that are not just fish stories but parables about the relationship between words and things. So now we see that how he criticized Stanley Fish's work. The fish is taken from Ezra Pound's ABC of Reading, and the second from John Steinbeck's written text for Sea of Cortege. Now, no man is equipped for modern thinking until he has understood the anecdotes of Agassiz and the fish. A postgraduate student, now here he criticized Stanley Fish. How he begins, he just begin with the same, like a postgraduate student equipped he with honors and diplomas went to Agassiz to receive the final and finishing touches. The great man offered him a small fish and told him to describe it. Postgraduate student, that's only a sunfish. So postgraduate student answered when the professor asked him that told me something or described me something about the small fish. The postgraduate student said that that's only a sunfish. Agassiz, I know that. Write a description of it. He said that I know that this is a sunfish, but you have to write a description of it. After a few minutes, the student returned with a description of ichthus. He now use a jargon word and or whatever term is used to conceal the common sunfish from vulgar knowledge family, and again he used the a jargon word etc, and found in a textbook of the subject. So that student go and he described it with many kinds of jargon words or many types of difficult word. Then he came and again, Agassiz told the student to describe the fish. The student produced a four-page essay. Now he can write the four-page essays, four pages essay. Agassiz then told him to look at the fish. At the end of the 3 weeks, the fish was in advanced state of decomposition, but the student knew something about it. So he said that after 3 weeks passed, the fish become an advanced state of decomposition. So you can say that how he criticized the Stanley Fish writings. Now our next question is question number 8. So, question number 8. Which of the following is not a character in Margaret Lawrence, The Stone Angel? So, we see that Penelope was not a character of Margaret Angel, Stone Angels. Now, we see about the story, The Stone Angel. The Stone Angel is a novel by Canadian writer Margaret Lawrence, first published in 1968. So now see about a plot summary of the novel. In a series of vignettes, the Stone Angels tell the story of Hagar Shipley. So who is Hagar Shipley? Hagar Shipley is a 90-year-old woman struggling to come to grips with a life of intransigence and loss. The theme of pride and the prejudice that comes from social class recur in the novel. So here we see that the themes of pride and prejudice that comes from social class. As a young girl, her she refused to rock her dying brother in the garments of their mother. So, as a young girl, she refused to rock her dying brother in the garments of their mother. As a young woman, she marries Brampton Shipley against her father's wishes. serving the family's ties. So, as a young woman, he marries Brampton. She play against her father's wishes, serving the family ties. She shows favoritism towards her younger child. She loved very much her younger child John. After Hagar separates from her husband, Hagar takes John with her. So Hagar takes her younger son with her. However, he ultimately returns to his father when John dies. But her younger son dies. Hagar does not cry, and at that point she turns into a stone angel. But Hagar loved so much her younger child John that she can't cry, and that turns into a stone angel. She became a stone angel. Later in life, her older son, whose name is Marvin, is shown to have been the good and loyal son uh, all along, despite the lack of his mother's favor. So here you see that her mother Hagar don't love her as much as he loved her mother. It is he, at the age of 64, along with his wife Doris, who takes care of her. So now his her older child taking care of her, but she showed no affection for his older son. As a 90-year-old woman, Hagar goes on an unexpected adventure into the wild woods alone. So she goes for a adventure, where she goes to unexpected adventure into the woods land. Given her age, there is an overtone that this event will be the last chapter of her life. In the woods, he meets another wanderer. The two have a bonding conversation. So here, there he meet a unknown adventurer. Uh, Now, where Hagar family opens up, a lifetime of buried emotion comes out, and she finally cries. So now she goes for a trip, and there she met with a strange and wanderer, and now she but her all her buried emotions comes out. She finally cries. The next day, the police and Marvin comes to rescue Hagar from the wood. In an act of love and repentance, she confessed to Marvin that he was the better son. So now, at the end of the novels, she finally confessed that yes, Marvin, her older son, is the better one, better son than John. Because John, though she loved John more than Marvin, but she herself know that Marvin was far better than John. He was responsible, he loved her very much, and he was loyal, and he was a caring child than John. It is unclear whether she dies at the end of the novel, but it is unclear that whether she dies or live. Now, see about the writer Margaret Lawrence. Margaret Lawrence, a Canadian novelist and short story writer born in the Perry town, Nipa, Manitoba. Inspiration for the fictional Manawaka. So there from there gets the name Manawaka. Uh, Her mother died when she was 4 after her father's death, 1935. She was brought up her stepmother by her stepmother. She attended the high school at which she began to write stories. Studies United College, Winnipeg. In 1947, she married John Lawrence, a civil engineer whose work later took them live in Africa for 5 years. Her time there inspired a tree for poverty. So her time there inspired a tree for poverty, a translated selection of Somali poetry, the prophet's camel bell, which was written in 1963, a memoir of her life in Somaliland, her first novel, The Side Jordan 1960, set in Ghana, a collection of stories in West Africa. The Tomorrow the Tomorrow Tamer, a critical work of contemporary Nigerian dramatist and novelist. Now, the mm, novelist. Now, for which in 1962, she moved to England with her two children after separating from her husband, and it was at Payne in Buckinghamshire that she began the series of four books based on her hometown renamed Manawaka, for which she is now best known The Stone Angel, A Jest of God, retitled Now I Laid Me Down for British publication. So, A Jest of God, retitled Now I Lay Me Down for British publication, filmed as Rachel, and later reissued under the title The Fire Dwellers, The Diviners, A Bird in the House. A collection of linked stories is also part of the Manawaka sequence. She returned to Canada in 1974. Heart of Stranger is a collection of essays, a draft of her memoirs, Dance on the Earth, edited by her daughter, was established. So here I try to give you some information about the writer. So please uh, try to know about the writer also, because her next other works are also important. So now our next question is question number 9. Which essential philosopher thought that man is potentially always in conflict with his neighbor and all social relationships are doomed to frustration? So this was the thought of Jean Paul Sartre. So here we see that the answer will be Jean Paul Sartre. Now this is the end of my video. From In my next video I will start from question number 10. So if you like my efforts, please like the video, and please try to share your feedbacks in the comment box. So thank you. I will try to take more videos and more explanation of each and every questions of WB set. Thank you very much.